Chen, thanks for coming onto the show. Now, you are an actor based in LA who's been in the film and TV industry for over a decade. You've been on 30 Rock. You've been on
God,
Fresh
don't
Off
say
the
that
Boat.
out loud.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
It's dropping the bucket. Dropping the bucket.
You've been on Fresh Off the Boat. You've been on Grey's Anatomy. But most recently, you played Yao in Disney's live-action remake of Mulan. I want to know more about how your mind works and your philosophy in life. But first, let's take a step back and learn about where all this came from. Before you got into acting, before you moved to LA, you were a kid who grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. You know, what was your experience like growing up as a young Asian dude in Memphis? And what was the moment or moments that sparked your love for acting?
Oh gosh. Well, number one, Memphis is actually a very cosmopolitan city. Mm-hmm. And I'll preface this by saying, I love the South. I love the Deep South. I miss it every day. Mm-hmm. But number two, there were, believe it or not, a surprising amount of Asians in the South, in Memphis in particular. Mm-hmm. We grew up with all, Vietnamese, Laotians, Chinese, Cantonese, Mandarin. It would surprise people, but that we grew up with that. But it's a very distinct culture. It's a Southern culture. It's a very mm-hmm. It's very American. But I also was fortunate to, I'm an immigrant because I wasn't born here. My family and I, we moved here. Mm-hmm. So when we moved here, we always stayed very connected to our Chinese culture and our roots. Mm-hmm. As much as a kid growing up in the Deep South could. Yeah. But and I will say, just the juxtaposition of two vastly different cultures. I like to joke that I'm from the Deep South of China and moved to the Deep South of America, because I'm from like deep China, deep South Guangxi, mm-hmm. China, and there's such a huge juxtaposition of cultures, and to see those two just kind of in high relief in a way, mm-hmm. it really, really gives me like a cool palette to draw from. Yeah, because we human beings, I'm a big believer in the how can I say, the malleability of the human mind and spirit. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally, if I had dropped you off in South Africa or, Kenya or something, you grew up there without knowing any different, you would be different. Yeah. Yeah, we would just be different. So I really don't actually even like that saying of, oh, just be yourself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, what do you mean myself? Like, how myself on a day with like a cold, or a day talking to, I don't know, the president of the United States, right?
Yeah, you change.
So, yeah, you change, and it's still you. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But we are infinite, I believe. We are infinite. So to see that from a young age, and even going back before I moved to the States, I was born in Japan. I was born in Kobe, Japan, mm-hmm. and and then I grew up in my childhood in Guangxi, China, which is right next to the Vietnam border. Mm-hmm. And just so there was so much. It's like you took like a cocktail shaker of me. If I was a cocktail shaker, you took it up and just shook it up.
All these mixes, yeah.
See what happens. And so that to me has always been sort of the cornerstone of not only my work, but the way I try to approach the world. Mm-hmm. And try to find appreciation and curiosity. This is like an exploration for me. I'm always infinitely curious about the way someone else's life is. Like, what is your life like if you're in an office? I have fantasies about that.
Yeah.
What's it like? What's it really like? The details. Uh-huh, uh-huh. And it just kind of gets me off. Like so that's how I like to.
Did that translate directly into, because I mean, especially this interest in like what other people's lives like, I mean, I'm sure that's perfect for an actor where you can sort of embody that. Is that sort of the foundation that led you on a path towards acting?
You know what? The truth is, man, I can't even say that acting was even like a thought when I was growing up, and listen, I grew up like with a very honestly all American life. You know, I played football for like 8 years. You know,
Really? What position do you play?
I played outside linebacker,
Wow,
and you know we
snap.
bounced around. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. You can't grow up in the deep south without sort of like dabbling and having some kind of peripheral interest in or knowledge of football.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And so anyway, like it wasn't even a thought. You know, I actually had dreams of being a soldier. You know, I come from a military family,
Hmm.
well, Chinese military, but I come from a military family, and I was like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that once I graduated high school, I was like, shit, man, like, well, I don't know what to do. Like,
Could
I
figure
have
it
some
out. And...
scholarships. I have some scholarships, and I was like, but I don't. I had no interest. I just wanted to cruise by life, you know, and
Hmm.
maybe see the world in a way. I was like, well, you know, maybe I shouldn't. I think I lost you there.
Hmm.
I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna enlist. I'm just gonna enlist.
Hmm.
It's always been in my bones, you know.
Hmm.
And it was 2006 at the time. You know, like it was right when we entered the Iraq War, right here in
Wow.
the States. And my mother literally sat me down at the kitchen table,
Hmm.
and she says, "You know, my Ying, you know, that's my nickname. That's my
Hmm.
short name in Chinese."
Hmm.
She said, "Well, sit down." Now, my parents are doctors. That's how they got here.
Hmm.
They're medical researchers, and they said, "Chen, you here you have a choice, right? You got some scholarships. You got a future. Now we support you if you want to do this, like literally, you know, because we come from a military family, you know.
Hmm.
Think carefully, though. I'm not gonna say yes or no. Just think carefully, right? I was like, oh yeah, you're right. You know, because I would have gone right to the straight. I would have gone straight to the front lines. You know, and 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 then she also said, like, you know what, we're doctors. Okay, we're doctors. We've been through medical school. We've had experience. It's very difficult,
Hmm.
and you don't have it. You don't got what it takes. So do anything but that. And I said, okay. So I went to business school, and you know, and then just discovered through a fine arts class that, you know, I had to take a fine arts class. I took acting because I thought it was interesting, and
Hmm.
I always, you know, had it in my mind. I was like, man, Hollywood is like kind of cool, man. You know, like acting, pretending, stuff
Hmm.
like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then I started doing it, and really enjoyed it. I just felt really enjoyed it. And the teacher was like, you know what, Chen, you really enjoy this. You seem like you really enjoy this. You're actually quite good too. So like, why don't you come and audition? And that's what I did. And you know, from there, and I literally, it wasn't like something like, oh my God, the muses came down from the heavens and, you know, ordained me as an actor. I was just I think I just, throughout the rehearsal process, I was just like, this is work. People get paid for this. This is great. So I woke up one day. I was like, I want to give my life to this. I really love this. I really enjoy this.
I
Yeah.
love the story about how you got into this because, you know, it's such an important reminder for a lot of artists who feel like, you know, oh man, you know, I didn't get into this art when I was younger, or I should have started earlier. And there's that feeling
Mm.
of like, you know, only people who are destined to do this, or people who wanted to do this early on should pursue it. But, you know, your example was something
I'll
that
put
kind of
it.
just, okay.
Hey man, I'll put it this way. You know, Morgan Freeman didn't really get started until 29. Like,
True.
you know,
Yeah.
if it works for Morgan, works for Morgan, it's good enough for us. All right.
Definitely.
There's some there. I mean, listen, like, you know, of course, I'm very much of this. I would call it like, there's a really great book by a guy named Cal Newport
Hmm.
called "So Good They Can't Ignore You."
Hmm.
I don't know if you heard about it. It's the
Sounds
New
I
York
know
Times
sounds familiar.
bestseller.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's excellent, but it's great, and really, for me, one of the key points he talks about, his one of his key theories is There's a difference between a passion mindset and a craftsman mindset.
What's that
See, the
difference?
passion mindset is like, well, like a passion mindset is like sort of in a nutshell, like, well, you know, I have passion there. First I must find the passion, and then I will go and do it, right? And then, you know, if I start to feel good, and then I can work. And then he says there's another mindset, and it's the craftsman mindset, where, you know, it's like a craftsman of any sort, like a furniture maker or something, like a carpenter. They go to work every day, and they work very hard, and they try to do their very, very, very best and become better about what they have chosen to do. And then they actually wake up one day and they're like, you know what? Because I'm good at what I do and all the things that it gives me, it's very fulfilling.
Yeah.
It's very fulfilling, and I start to fall in love with it more and more because I start to get fascinated by it. Now, that doesn't mean that they're mutually exclusive, but there is something to be said about, like, you know, I think a lot of people forget about this any kind of art. You know, art is the synthesis of both passion and skill, especially if you're doing it at a professional level. So that's, for me, something that I very, very, I mean, I'm obsessed with the craft. I work on my craft all the time. I love it and think about it, you know, and try to be inspired for it. But, you know, it's basically about just getting up and doing the work every day. And there's a lot of that here, unfortunately, in this town. They're distracted by this purple haze of Hollywood. It's not quite like that. Nobody ever sees us just sitting there, you know, all the late nights, all the sleepless nights banging away. Just you got 2 days to get 8 pages ready for an audition, and you want to do the best work you can. Nobody sees us like tired, and, you know, like, you know, nobody sees those parts. They only see the glamour and the glitz of Hollywood, and that's a symptom. That's a byproduct of doing the work.
So Chen, going back on your work in Mulan, one of the things I love is that you ended up playing Yao, who's such an iconic character in the original movie for, you know, being a goofy, macho kind of guy. But, you know, there's always this question of, like, how will this version compare to the original? And, you know, speaking on process and speaking on craft, what was your process like taking and transforming this iconic character and making it something of your own?
Well, you know, the truth is, you know, when I was one of the last folks added to the main cast, and so I was added a little bit late because, you know, during the auditioning process and the development process, the scripts are getting, you know, changed as they go along. So when I actually got the role, I was not actually cast as Yao. I think believe it or not. I think this is actually you're probably the first person I've ever told this to.
Oh,
in the media.
Oh shit. Yeah, okay. Right. So what happened? Lay this out.
And you know what? Like, and I'm okay with saying it because, like, it's nothing bad because, you know, literally they were like, this is the character. And they just didn't have a name yet at first because, like, they weren't sure how far or close they wanted to take it to the original cartoon.
Okay.
Because most of it was really inspired by the legend, right? They're like, you know what? Like, we're going to change all this stuff. We might as well. How far do you want to go? Do you want to go for broke, or do you want to just, like, anyway? So when I was cast, they were like, you know, I went into the audition, and Deborah Zane, brilliant casting director, she was like, all right, so here's the situation. We have most of the squad, but you know, we're looking. They're missing a piece. They're really missing this tough macho machismo guy because they're all like boys, you know. Like, you need a guy, a dude, just to bully people around, you know. Yeah. And I was like, great. And she's like, do what you do, you know. And I did what I did, and thanks to the Lord, they liked me enough. And you know, when I ended up getting the role, went there, and they were like, I get to the trailer, and they're like, you know, we don't have a name for your character yet because it's not been written into the new script because they're busy creating it along the way. we couldn't think of a name yet, so why don't we just call him Chen? So that was my first character name.
Oh,
It was just gonna be
snap.
Chen.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
Yeah, believe it or not, right? So, and then as I was creating, and I was like, even during the audition, I gotta tell you, I was like, no, I'm inspired, but there's already a guy there like that. I'm inspired by that. I'm inspired by the work that Harvey Firestein did, and it was a cartoon version, but I was like, you know what? I really like the choices you made, and I'm gonna steal, man. Steal, right? It's like imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So I was like, I'm actually really inspired by Yao. I am not 5 feet tall. I am not, but there's an essence because it was so rich and so strong, and it's fun. He's the king of the rock. So I actually, as soon as they were telling us that, and I got the sense of that in the audition, I was like, yeah, right there, it's Yao, man. And so I did that, and in my own way, through my own work.
Awesome.
And yeah, and it ended up being that they actually ended up changing the character name to Yao. They were like, yeah, you're right. We have Ling, we have Po already. What the hell? Like it's no brainer. So,
wow. I mean, and that's sort of
to answer your question, like how will this compare? How will this compare? That's the age-old question, right? How will this compare? I think people would be pleasantly surprised, to be honest.